lot of things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you from the evil eyes. Sheikh, as we begin our discussions on the tsunami of atheism, it would be extremely beneficial if you could first explain the history of atheism, its origins, its development, the social, intellectual, and psychological factors that are causing people to incline toward atheism today, Sheikh.
Okay, so this is a good place to start. And I think just before we talk about that, let's quickly, although everyone knows basically, so when we say atheism now, technically people would say atheism means the claim that God does not exist, right? But when we're using atheism now, we're using it in a much broader sense of people who just are not sure, agnostics. They're not sure, does God exist? They don't subscribe to any religion. Within surveys, you will see these people called nuns, Nones, meaning they don't affiliate to any religion. So they're not like technically atheists, but in today's time, when we talk about atheism, it encompasses basically people that are very skeptical about any religion. They don't really accept any one religion, but they're not going to say like definitely God doesn't exist. They'll say maybe God exists, I don't know, but I don't follow any of these religions. These religions are man-made. So that's an important point to remember, because when you're going to talk about the facts and the studies and the surveys of how atheism is growing, it includes all of these people, some of whom may even say maybe there is a God. Some might say, I think there is a higher power. But they still fall under this bracket of atheism because they don't subscribe to any one religion in the surveys and studies. So we have the term atheism, right? Then we have the term agnosticism, where you're not really sure. Then we have the term naturalism, which is that you believe that everything that occurs can be explained via natural means, and there's nothing supernatural. And then you have the term skepticism, which is where a person is highly doubtful of any supernatural claim or any claim with respect to religion, which obviously will be counted as supernatural, right? So now let's go into the history. Now, over the last few thousand years, if we go back 2, 3, 4,000 years ago, you had people who said, I don't believe in God. But these people were few and far between. You had one Greek philosopher here, another guy there. You had these people, they were there. There's no doubt about it. They did exist, atheists, from far back, from thousands of years ago. But these atheists were in their own small pockets, here, another one there, there's a different one there. They were not. Now, what we're seeing today is completely different and unprecedented. And in a way, its causes and symptoms and that is different from that atheism. Those atheism, sometimes because maybe the Greek philosophers would look and see all of these Greek gods do us, and that these are fairy tales, they're not true, so therefore I don't believe in God. Their reasoning could be different. However, once the Enlightenment started in the 1700s, that's where things begin to change. And that leads us now to the modern form of atheism and skepticism that we see. So how does that come about? That's what we need to understand. So number one, how that really came about was, in the West, the standard for religion was Christianity, and the standard for scripture was the Bible. In the
Absolutely.
Enlightenment period, in the Enlightenment period, they proved that the Bible has many errors. They also proved that the Bible wasn't actually written by those people, by Moses, etc. They proved all of these things about the Bible. So people began to think, okay, well, the Bible is false and Christianity is false, therefore religion is probably made up. But that's a leap. That's an extrapolation. That's not that reasoning is not correct. But people began to think like that. So the Enlightenment thinkers then took God out of the equation because they said this Bible is false. We can see the errors in it. Therefore, we're not going to talk about God. So they removed revelation from the equation. So now the epistemology in the West removed revelation as one of the sources of knowledge, which used to be there, and they focused more on scientific knowledge, meaning empirical knowledge, and a little bit of rational reasoning. Now, the issue with this is that scientific knowledge, yes, we as Muslims, we love science, we are for science, we don't have any issues with science, but scientific knowledge updates itself as we learn more. So we had Newtonian mechanics, then we went on to Einstein's theories, and now we're in quantum mechanics. All of these things we learn about the universe, what we previously didn't know. So what happens is people begin to think that knowledge is only scientific knowledge. And then when that happens, they automatically rule out God from the equation, because science cannot empirically test God. So if your only source of
Exactly.
scientific knowledge, or your only source of knowledge is scientific knowledge, automatically you cannot talk about God, because you're only talking about those things that you can see and touch and feel and test, etc. And then what happens is you also begin to think that knowledge is only scientific knowledge, and scientific knowledge updates and changes. Therefore, knowledge is something that can always change, and knowledge will always change. That's what people think. Therefore, people are skeptical because they'll say, I think this is true, but I may be wrong. And that's a good attitude to have in some things, but there are other things that we are 100% certain of. 1 plus 1 is 2. God exists. Islam is true. These are not things where we say, I could be wrong. This we know for sure. So that's how skepticism sort of came in one way, right? The second way that skepticism sort of came in was through the way that that history and the sciences are taught in the universities. So in universities, history, for example, is taught purely naturalistically. So, for example, if Jesus makes a prophecy in the Gospels and says that the temple will be destroyed, etc., and then the temple is destroyed, so secular historians will say, well, there's no such thing as prophecy because prophecy is supernatural. Therefore, whoever wrote this prophecy of Jesus must have wrote it after the temple was destroyed and he made it up. So therefore, in university, in history, and in the sciences, and in anything you study, implicitly they are teaching you that these supernatural events can't occur. We can explain everything via naturalistic means. So that begins to be imprinted in people's minds. So that's another issue. And the third issue, which is maybe the most important issue here, is it's a good thing that science has made so many leaps and bounds in medicine, in travel, um, in technology. Science has done amazing, amazing, amazing things. There's no doubt about that. But what happens in the mind of people is they say, okay, science has done these amazing things. Therefore, science is always right. Now that's false. That way of thinking is false. But to a lay person who doesn't know any better, who's not really examining it, he believes that. He starts to believe that. He thinks, hey, look at what science did in the medicine, in technology, in all of these things. Therefore, I think whatever scientists say, it must be right. He doesn't say that consciously, but subconsciously, that's what's going through his mind. And therefore, he falls into what we call scientism, where it's what in Arabic, like we say, ghulu in science, where you say,
Absolutely.
for example, that the only way to the truth is the scientific method. So that's ghulu, that's scientism. Or you say that everything science says is 100% right. That's ghulu, that's scientism. Or you say the laws of nature can never ever be broken. Again,
And this
that's
is true
ghulu, that's
that,
scientism.
and Sheikh, this is true that it's, most of the atheists are engulfed in a scientism, in a pseudo scientific method, Sheikh.
Exactly, exactly. So this scientism is what gets people, and it stems from university education. It stems from not understanding how science works exactly, and it stems from the way the media and thing portrays science as being infallible. So it comes, all of these things sort of lead to that sort of skepticism that we have now.